let's see if it goes live. All right, so this is telling me that I'm live, so let's just check everything one more time. And got a lot of tabs up on that browser. So 7:59 started just a little early, right? Yeah. Okay, let me test the chat really quick. Test chat, because I'm just curious about that. And then let's see if that actually shows up. So hey everyone, and good morning. It's a happy Monday morning here, and happy May the 4th. So may the 4th be with you. So you see all this Star Wars stuff up here. I had to do it. I'm sorry. It's having a little fun with it. But yeah, who knew that May 4th would become some kind of crazy meme for Star Wars fans? I gotta say, Star Wars came out in 1977, so I was 6 years old, and one of the first big movies I'd ever seen that wasn't a cartoon. And yeah, dyed-in-the-wool Star Wars fan for quite some time now, for decades. So I thought I'd pop up the May the 4th be with you for everybody here, and before we start into everything. So having a little fun. Doing a couple of other things with the live stream now, so I'm just checking it out to see if it's working. And okay, my little test thing looks like it worked. Yeah, it sure did. So I've got the little chat window going on here over on the right hand side now. If that's annoying to you, just let me know in the chat and I can turn that off. But just doing a couple of new setups with OBS, the open broadcasting software. I gotta say, this is pretty amazing stuff these days, that from a small room or from an Airstream or hanging out on a beach, people can actually do these types of live streams, communicate with folks across the globe. You got to admit, tech has come a long way and offers some pretty cool stuff. So, all right, with the May the 4th be with you over here, I'm going to close this one up. And I actually had popped up a couple other screens. Definitely a long-term Star Wars fan. What can I tell you? All right, let's close those down. And I actually have some show notes for today. And let's go ahead over here. So I was going to talk about several things today, some smaller topics for the morning. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the new drone construction progression course that's just about done. So we've got that up on screen from Udemy. In addition to that, I want to talk about color space and color. I want to know if you're seeing what I want you to see. And the answer is probably no. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, unfortunately, I didn't receive one of the new Mavic 2 Airs or the new Mavic Air 2s, whichever way they call it. So I haven't been able to test one, and honestly, I didn't expect to be receiving one on this channel, so that was me joking. Not getting that far ahead of myself. But out there in YouTube land right now, there's a lot of stuff about the new Mavic Air 2. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in this morning's live stream. And finally, I also wanted to talk a little bit about WebODM, because I did a video on YouTube just a couple of days ago. Got some good reaction and response, got some feedback from people. And so I wanted to talk just a little more about that and my experience so far. I'm not done testing with it yet. I'm not done learning, but I definitely don't feel like I've got the right system for running that. And we'll talk a little more about that. But first, I know that folks have been, I've gotten multiple private emails from the Patreon channel and from people in email through azdrone.net wondering, hey, where is this class at? You've been playing with this for April. And yes, I have, and I've had some other projects going on as well. So sometimes it feels like I'm filling in the free time with this one, but we're just about there with it. So what's the whole intent of this class? It's to walk you through one of my recent drone construction progression jobs. So you've seen a lot of it on the Patreon, you've seen a lot of it on YouTube, and I'm pulling it all together into a series on my workflow with it. So we start out and we start talking about how I got the job in the first place. So I'm looking on Udemy right now. So the class isn't available. This is the preview screen for Udemy instructors. So if you ever decide to do your own Udemy classes or even other places, you get a private preview of your stuff before you publish it. So that's fantastic. It gives you a little bit of time to do proof of concept. And I actually send out some of the course links to folks to get critiques before I finally launch it. So for those of you who are patrons on my Patreon channel, you're well aware that I've been putting some of these videos up, and this week you're going to see some more. So if you're on the Patreon channel, look forward to seeing some more of the lectures from this. And as always, I love your feedback from it. For all the folks on YouTube, you've probably said to yourself, hey, there's not as many videos coming out every week from the channel. Actually, there are. I'm doing a lot of extras on Patreon, and I'm doing a lot for this class. So you'll be seeing more on the regular YouTube channel as well. And for everyone who has been supporting the channel, thanks. I appreciate it. For those of you who are popping by and giving a like and subscribe, I appreciate that just as well. So I'm glad to see the community growing. I never thought we'd be over 3,000 people. So this has been pretty amazing. So, all right, let's take a look at what's happening with the course. Now, number one, before I take a look on the Udemy, I just want to pull this screen over here for you. I'm just making it a little bigger. So this is my Final Cut setup for doing these classes. And on the classes, oh, and don't mind me if I keep looking over here. I'm just checking to make sure I don't miss any chats from folks because I see we've got a couple of people here. So thanks for stopping in, everybody. You missed just a little bit in the beginning, just being a little silly, so you didn't miss too much. But I took a look this morning at the size of this folder, so it's nearing 700 megs, or I'm sorry, 700 gigs. So this has gotten huge. So we're coming up on a terabyte. And as you can see, so we've got the course intro, lecture 1, all the way through lecture 13. 14 still in process, and 15 and 16, I'm going to be changing those around. At the moment, what's loaded up to Udemy for the test platform is everything up to 12, I believe. So at the moment, just scrolling down here, yeah, 12 total lectures. Right now it's at 2.5 hours. When I'm finished with this, it's going to be more like 3.5 hours probably, and keeping the content relevant the entire time. So I will be posting on the Patreon channel and on YouTube when this class is finally available. So over on the right-hand side, this kind of looks like what students would see as well. Section 1, we've got the introduction to the course. It's 17 minutes long, and there is a download slideshow as well. And then section number 2 is getting the job. So I talk about how I got the job, which might give you some ideas about how you can get your next drone construction progression job as well. And in that, there's actually 2 lectures. The first one's on the call I almost didn't get because apparently I had had a website problem going on at the time when the clients contacted me, and they couldn't get an email through to me. So they finally made a phone call, and I was lucky they took the time to make the call. Lecture number 3, I talk a little more about client outreach with more focus on what you can do online for reaching people, because we're providing digital services, so there's an expectation that we're going to know how to deliver things electronically to the clients. So we talk a good bit about that, and once again, that one also has a separate slideshow just going through the things that have worked for me. Now, other ways and other types of outreach might work better for you. So, you know, this is just my particular timeline of this job is what we're going through. Section 3 is the big one where it gets exciting and much more informative, because we start talking about the tools used, about checking out the construction site ahead of time, about regularly checking the site out while it's in process. So we talk about that in lecture 4, investigating the construction site and your initial planning. Lecture number 5, we talk about the flight apps that are going to be used. And we do a flight planning example with Map Pilot. This class, by the way, so when it launches, it's not for beginners per se. So we're not teaching you how to fly your drone. We're not teaching you how to run through all the options on all the apps. We're talking about the specific tools that I used for this specific project. So if you're super beginner, this one probably won't be for you, and that's okay. You've got some additional learning to do, and that's how we all learn and grow. at some point it might become relevant to you. So lecture 6, we talk about doing the time-lapse videos and time-lapse stills and how we get consistent footage. So how we can pre-plan flights that are executed the same way over and over again, autonomous drone flight. So we talk more about the video side of it and the still photo side of it in this one. In lecture number 7, I actually did a bonus lecture where I used another job site to show you time-lapse video that's overlapped. So this month to next month to next month, where you're actually overlapping each month's video so you can fade from the beginning to the middle to the end kind of thing. So I showed that one off as well. And then lecture number 8, we do a bonus Litchi flight where we're actually going to execute the saved mission. So, and just looking at this, I said to myself, oh, something got moved out of order, so I'm going to have to play with the Udemy setup afterward because I'm missing one of the videos there. So that was lecture 8. So let's go down. Alrighty, so here we are. In section 4, we're going to talk about offloading the data after your visit to the site. Because I have a particular workflow for myself. You don't have to use my workflow, but it might give you some ideas of how you want to streamline things when you're doing these types of jobs. So lecture number 10, we talk about doing an orthomosaic 2-dimensional model, why I'm doing it, why the clients liked it and wanted it. And then let's scroll down here some more. Lecture 11, we're building a video time-lapse with Final Cut. So we actually show you in video. So I think you'll get a kick out of that one. Lecture 12 is a time-lapse video series that takes place several months apart. So we're definitely showing you several times over the process, and hopefully that will be useful to you as you start building your own process, not just for drone construction progression flights. You can do this for all sorts of other flights. The construction industry isn't just utilizing drones for progression reporting. They're utilizing drones for documenting the entire build out, for doing modeling, for doing 3D modeling, for taking measurements, if there's licensed land survey engineers involved. So, I'm doing this progression reporting work, but there's still a lot more that can be done on behalf of construction companies. So hopefully when this class is all set and loaded up and ready for you, this will spur some ideas in your own minds about where you're going with your business. And a lot of these tools can still be used for, the for fun drone flight as well. So hopefully this class is going to be really useful to everyone. I've gotten so many questions as I've talked about drone construction progression on YouTube. So that's why I put this class together, and I think it should be launched by the end of this week. So no hard and fast promises, but I'm going to be getting several more videos up today on the Patreon channel. So those of you who are patrons, I'll be looking forward to your feedback, and we'll see if we can't get this finished up and wrapped up and keep my attention on one thing. And no fault of my own. I've had a lot of inquiries last week. I've been doing a lot of Zoom conference calls with clients. So even though we've had the, kind of work from home and social distancing, I've still been able to do a lot of work and talk to some new potential clients last week. So that was fantastic as well. All right, so that's the wrap up on where the course is at. And I'm going to go ahead and let's minimize these. And by the way, so when the course does get launched, if you're interested in it, please be sure to stop by and check the newest videos here on YouTube. I will have links to the class, and those links will have discount codes for my regular YouTube folks and patrons. And the reason why I do the links there, if you go directly over to Udemy, not using a link that I provide you, and you find my class through Udemy, not through one of my links, Udemy gets to take the lion's share of the revenue. And hey, Joe, how are you doing? So by the way, like I said, I keep looking over here just to see who's around. Hey, Corey. Oh, volume too low? Let me see here. All right, I've got it on the same gain as before. I'm not quite sure. I'll need to play with it a little more. Sorry about that, Corey. Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to turn the gain up just a little bit more, and you can let me know if that helps out. All right, so what I was saying, when you do a purchase direct through Udemy, they get the lion's share of the revenue, and Udemy does a lot of specials. They do a lot of discount weekends. They do the Black Friday specials, and so people usually find a lot of Udemy classes that way. Here's the thing, though. Last month, I looked back at the month's revenue for new signups to all of the classes that I have on Udemy, and I was averaging about $4.20 per student. And Udemy was doing a markdown to $10 each. So if you find me directly through the Udemy website, they'll be getting the lion's share of the revenue. If you follow one of my links where I'm doing one of my coupon codes, and following along with that link, I actually get to keep the lion's share. So when the new class comes out, or when you're interested in any of the other classes, just check out the latest YouTube videos. They'll have the newest coupon codes, and I'll be setting those up this week too, because you have to set them up every month. So they expire each month, and then you got to go through, if you got 6 courses, you got to go through and set up 6 different coupon codes. So greatly appreciated to those of you interested in the class, and thanks for using my links. Greatly appreciated as well. All right, let me take a look down here and stare at my little show notes thing for the morning. Color space. So I've been wanting to, this has been something that's driving me crazy. Hey, John, and good to know that worked, Corey. So I just pushed it up a little bit more on the gain on the mic there. So last week, I was talking to somebody who had popped by the website, and they were saying, oh, I have more than just azdrone.net. I also have my old Airstream blog that I was doing since 2006, and I got a couple other things up. But I had somebody pop by, and they made a comment about an image, one of my older images, and they said, wow, that image is really super dark rich. And the image wasn't really super dark from my viewpoint. I'm sitting here with 2 different screens in front of me. I've got the iMac over here. I've got a Samsung curved monitor over here. Got another monitor sitting over here as well with a different setup. Not all monitors are created the same. Not all monitors are calibratable. That's not really a word. You can't calibrate all monitors out there. So I never know what people are looking at my images or my videos with. I have no control over the monitor that you have hooked up right now. So for all I know, the color quality has me looking like a sunburned lobster in some cases, or in other cases, completely and totally super washed out. It also depends on the lights that I have up here, and the fact that I have a green screen behind me there. It creates some color casts. So I have to toy with that a little bit. So down in the lower corner here of the screen where you see me, I'm seeing one version of me. You might be seeing a different version of me. This is something that's driven me absolutely bonkers for years. When I first moved out to Prescott, Arizona, I ended up partnering up with another person in town, and I was co-owner of a gallery from 2008 to 2012. I did a lot of custom printing for clients. I actually had one of those giant wide format printers where you could print on canvas as well as other media. And I had a color calibrated model or monitor and a Macintosh setup. So I knew my colors and my screen brightness and everything were absolutely spot on. I was constantly testing those things. I would actually do reproductions of original paintings for the painters, and the colors would be spot on, to where the reproductions that we did for them looked so spot on with the original paintings. So I did that for several years, and I was neurotic about color management. Oftentimes, I'd have people come into the gallery and pay me a visit in my studio room, and they say, wow, your stuff on the wall is so much more bright and so much more vivid. When I was looking at it on the web, it was super dark, and I didn't like it at all, but I love this. I'm not kidding. I had those conversations on a regular basis with people. Everything on my end was set up to be color accurate, to, have the right light levels and everything. But they were looking at it from some other, cheap monitor, or a monitor that they couldn't adjust, or a monitor that they did adjust, and they went crazy on the contrast. Um, so not all monitors are created equal. So one of the tough things delivering any kind of digital assets. So we're delivering drone job information. We're delivering those images and video for people. Um, I'm on boat Wi-Fi hotspot. May have issues here. Oh, that's cool, Corey. Um, so I don't know what you're seeing in the end. So I do calibrations here. I also deal with the lighting here and the color casts afterward to try to get it as good as possible. But when you're delivering to clients, when you do maybe a deliverable package like I do, or you're sending them some images for a real estate shoot you did, you have no idea and no control over what they're viewing with. So sometimes it might be in your interest to go to those client locations and have a presentation, um, at the ready for them on, let's say, a laptop that you do know that you can calibrate and that you fine tuned to show things off. So also so I don't work for these guys, and and I was a little ticked off at them a few months ago. So this is the i1 color checker photo kit from X-Rite, and I had one of their color monkeys. Well, I shouldn't say had. I still have one of their color monkeys that I purchased years ago that I used for color management, for printing, and for my editing on screen. The color monkey that I have is no longer supported. They no longer update the software for it since a specific Mac OS X version, which is a real bummer because I've got the equipment and I can't use it just because, we've gone that far away in the software side. So I had to pick up one of the new versions. So it does the same exact thing. You actually throw it on your monitor. It goes through some testing. It tells you the brightness that it should be. It fixes your color for you. And then it gets saved as a profile. So I'm just going to go up to my system preferences here. And I'm going to go down to my displays. So I had created I did a new color profile just yesterday in anticipation of doing this live stream. So that's my new iMac 2020 503. And so what I am looking at on my screen is a color calibrated screen, and the brightness is adjusted to where it should be. So that person, when I was told recently, hey, that was really, really dark. It wasn't really dark on my screen. It wasn't even really dark on this other monitor that I can't calibrate. So I don't know what that person was looking at. Do they have their brightness too low? Do they have their brightness too high? Oftentimes for people who are doing mobile, so your iPhone, your Galaxy Tab, whatever you're using, tablet or phone, a lot of people just punch that brightness up to 100%. So they might be washing out some images they're looking at. So they might look at an image and go, whoa, this is way too bright. And it's all dependent on the device you're using. If you can calibrate it, if you can adjust your brightness controls and edit for those controls. So it's a tough one. So, when you're talking about color and brightness and things, it might look great to you and it might look really crazy to other people. One of the things you can do is make sure that you have a calibratable monitor and a tool like this. And it doesn't have to just be X-Rite. There are other companies out there. Another one's called the Spider, I believe. I remember those from way back. But even if you do everything right on your screens, what you present to potential customers and customers might look a lot different. And I've sat down on friends' Windows machines, and I've got a Windows system over here with a, I can't even remember which brand. Oh, it's a ViewSonic. And when I look at my websites and some of my work on that screen, it looks god awful. And there's nothing else I can do to fine tune that particular screen. It's not calibratable. It has very few options on it. It was a super cheap screen. I think maybe it was $130. And when you get a super cheap screen, you might not have the best color quality. So for a lot of people, it doesn't matter if they're playing video games. But when it comes to doing your presentations, color management's huge. and you might want to have a conversation with your clients about, hey, what are you viewing this with? And that way you can get a gauge as to whether or not they're not seeing what you were trying to present them. So I'm just going to move that one over. But so that's the i1 color checker photo kit. It comes with a little device that goes onto your screen, and it comes with a, I've been using these forever. This is a color checker passport. So when I do still photography, this one's very important to me, especially when we're doing portrait work. But you've got your whole color gamut right there. You've got your gray card going on in here so that you can reset white balance. As you know, colors do change from outside to inside, and they also change depending on what kind of lighting you have. Sorry, I just hit that microphone there. So, like I said, I don't work for them. I don't get anything out of it, but it is a product that I regularly use. And it just came to mind last week when someone said that things were looking too dark and too contrasty to them, while on my screen it was pretty poppy and vibrant. So like I said, I don't even know what I look like on your screens in that little corner there. But the color's looking pretty good in here today. All right, so that's enough on color. Next thing that I wanted to talk about today, and yeah, Corey, you're dead on. You get what you pay for. Well, one of the really crazy things, though, like I'm looking over at this Samsung monitor here. It's a very nice monitor. The color on this is way different than the Mac screen right now. I don't edit on this screen at all because it's so far off, and I only have a couple of options for adjusting the screen. I cannot profile this screen properly with that color checker. So one of the big things, if you're doing a lot more video work or a lot more photography work, you might want to look into monitors that are specifically calibratable monitors. So there are companies out there that work with professionals, and those monitors are much more expensive. You know, you can get into the $700-800 range to a couple $1,000s, and it really depends on the work you're doing. But you know, whenever I look over at the Samsung monitor when I'm doing my editing over here, oftentimes I'll turn this monitor off because it's throwing me off. I look over at it, and I just need to do the work with the color calibrated monitor. I do use this screen as kind of a test, since this is a monitor that I can't get everything I want out of it. What's it look like on a generic monitor? So I'll drag stuff over there just to take a look to see how big the differences are. Sometimes they're pretty big. So, all right, enough on the color. So the next thing, I had joked right at the start of the live stream here. So I didn't receive one of the new Mavic Air 2s. I'm not a big enough channel. And that's okay. I can wait a little while on it. So I've just got the screen up here. I'm very interested in the Fly Longer 34-minute max flight time. That one caught my attention, but I'm going to be holding off for now because oftentimes third-party app developers, Map Pilot, you know, even Ground Station Pro, Litchi, you know, whoever it is, it takes them a few minutes to get the software developers kit from DJI, so their products might not be ready to roll immediately on one of the newer drones. And what that means is if you're building a drone business and you've got specific applications that you're using for capturing the images and capturing the video and creating repeatable, reusable flights, when the newest drone hits, the updates aren't always there for some of your favorite tools. So with that in mind, this is not something I'm going to be buying in the near future because I've got everything dialed in where I need it from the work that I'm doing. And primarily, you know, my drones are used for work. This looks like a really great for fun drone. I've seen some of the videos on it. I know that now they're doing 4K 60 frames a second, so that's sounding pretty good. But the gear that I have today is meeting my needs and meeting my customer needs. And so with that in mind, you know, why race out and get the newest thing? I like the new price point on this one. I saw the price point on it and I said, wow, they're doing a nice job. One of the other things, though, I think my next drone is going to be one of the Phantom 4 Pros because the high desert here is a very windy place. And basically anything over 22 mile an hour wind speed here, I'm not flying for my clients. So, and we have that often, and we've got some pretty big gusts here. So going with an even smaller drone, getting knocked around in the wind, it's not for me quite yet. Um, Everyone who's reviewing it right now, what's been coming out, have been some really great reviews. I gotta say, so I'm not picking on anybody, but some of the review things, everyone is so big on the distance tests and the speed tests. So I had watched another YouTuber, 51 Drones. I love his channel, and he was talking about, I think they said 10 kilometers or 6 miles away. I don't have any paperwork on beyond visual line of sight for myself right now. So saying that something can fly 6 miles away from me is kind of lost on me because, BVLOS. And so doing these speed tests and doing these super distance tests, I'm not quite sure, it doesn't mean too much to me in my business. Right now, I'm usually within 1,500 feet of my drone most times when I'm doing my flights. If I've got to get further than that, I've got a visual observer. If it drops out of my sight anywhere for a moment, I have someone watching out for that. But I'm not flying the drone miles away when I'm doing these jobs. So while it sounds like an interesting selling point, most of us don't have waivers for beyond visual line of sight anyways. So those distance tests don't mean much to me right now. And that's, like I said, not picking on anyone. It's just fitting into my business applications. That kind of flight distance is completely and totally unnecessary for what I'm doing today. So there we go. So at some point, you'll probably see one of these Mavic Air 2s in my inventory because it looks really cool. And I would really like to try out that 4K 60 frames a second. That's interesting as well. So the final thing that I wanted to talk about this morning on channel here was WebODM. So if you didn't already see it on YouTube, I put up a video on using WebODM. So that's Web Open Drone Mapping. It is an open source platform. So let's just WebODM. So this is an open source platform, so you can start utilizing WebODM today. If you're doing the totally free version, you're going to need to know something about the command line and things like that. You can also get a little bit, it's not too expensive. They do have a higher end version that has an installer, so you don't have to know things from command line. But I wanted to follow up on this because I've gotten some feedback from folks. Bottom line, this is a functional drone modeling application, without a doubt. You can get it completely for free, which is mind-blowing considering the fact that other services are hundreds of dollars a month or thousands of dollars in licensing fees per year. Here's the thing with WebODM. They're depending on you to have a much higher end processing computer. So I use my iMac for doing a lot of my modeling. The iMac's not really up to it. It's only got 8 gigs of RAM. But let me tell you, with the higher end applications like Metashape Pro, I can get my models run. The application doesn't crash, it just takes longer. So they make use of the resources they have and they can still produce the models for me. In the case of this open drone mapping and this open source drone mapping, they're depending on you to have a really high-end machine for processing this stuff. So I've had people say to me, well, hey, it's free though. This is great. It's sort of free. You're not paying for the software, but now you're paying for a really bumped up PC to do the job. Their recommendation is 16 gigs of RAM minimum. And if you can get a lot more RAM, go ahead and do it. Well, suddenly you're spending several $1,000s on the machine that you're using to process. Now the question comes down to, is this good enough to replace one of those multi-$1,000 applications out there? If I can get one of those applications to run my models and generate accurate and usable models for me, and they just do them a little slower, do I want to invest thousands of dollars into a new machine to run free software? Or maybe I want to do something in the middle, build a middle of the road machine and then pick one of these higher end software packages. So I'm not picking on WebODM. I'm letting you know there's a trade-off. While you're getting one thing for free, you have to spend more money on the other part of it. So in the end, drone modeling still comes down to some heavier expenses. And so I just wanted to make that really clear to folks that, yeah, this is really cool. And, I made a pretty nice, so this was the cover for my YouTube video the other day, a second look at WebODM and open source drone mapping. And the ortho mosaic that you're looking at was generated with WebODM. It did a very nice job. It was a job that was less than 100 images. It's a 5-acre plot of land. And so it was a very simple one. But when you start trying to use the higher end features of WebODM, at least on this iMac, it raises the white flag and says, I can't do this. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall WebODM on my Windows machine over here. This machine has 16 gigs of RAM. I had tried some testing last year on it, and the testing failed over and over again. But I think there have been some improvements since I'd last tried it out. So I'm going to throw it onto that machine, see if I can do some larger models. And by that, I mean, using more images here. Let me look back over the flight endurance, Karen's, over distance. Yeah, so that was the Mavic 2 Air one. So sorry about that. I forget to look over here. Oh, and by the way, so on the stream today, I actually have the little chat window up there. Let me know if you like that or you didn't like that. I can easily delete it. I've been playing around with OBS, the open broadcasting software that I'm using for these streams. I've been playing around with it to see what other cool things I can add into it. So, all right, back to WebODM. I will be doing at least one more test. I will be doing it on that Windows system, and we'll see if I can get through processing a larger model. I've got a model with about 300 images, and we'll see if it works over there. I tried running that model on this iMac, and even on the lowest setting, even on the fast ortho setting, it threw up the white flag. So it tried, it ran for a couple hours, and then it gave up. So like I said, not picking on WebODM. It's fantastic, and if you've already got a machine with higher specs, it might be worth the try for you. And so with that said, go out, experiment. If any of you are using it, if any of you are trying it out, I would love to hear what your system settings are and what you're running on it, because that'll give everyone else on this channel a great idea of, should I invest in a higher end system and just run WebODM? Or should I look at one of these higher end software packages? Like I've said before, if you're just learning how to do 3D modeling with drones, number one, you can do all of these tests. So you can do trial periods with Pix4D, with Metashape, with Drone Deploy, with Maps Made Easy. They have trial periods on their software. So you can try things out, and I would suggest trying one thing out at a time. Don't download all these apps all at the same time, because you're going to run out of time. Give yourself the time to experiment with each one of them. Then when I first started out with this, I decided to make a move to Metashape Standard. It was PhotoScan Standard at that time. But I moved to that one to practice my modeling more, and it doesn't let you do the orthos or digital elevation models. So what it does let you do is it lets you do 3D models that you can play around with. So, Metashape Standard is a good platform to start using on if you're looking for low expenses. And on this particular iMac, it runs my models fine. I've done some very large models. It just takes more time. So I'm willing to trade that time instead of having to spend extra. But like I said just a few minutes ago, we're going to try that Windows machine out probably this week. I'm going to reinstall WebODM because I had made the purchase from them for both the Windows and Mac installations. Looking over, hey David, how are you doing? Let me see, quick question. If hardware were not an issue, do you think WebODM... The quick ortho that I did the other day with WebODM was absolutely incredible. It overlaid on my Google Earth map very nicely. It wasn't exactly matched up. It was definitely a few feet off, but with the testing I was doing, I was incredibly impressed with the default one. It really cleaned up the two-dimensional model well. And it would have, if I had bothered to shoot the sides of the buildings, I think it would have rendered those as well. So I'm going to be retesting that for myself as well. And I've got another flight application that I'm planning on using with it. I think if I had a higher spec machine, the output that I saw from this was pretty darned amazing. So it might give them a run for their money. I just think it's very resource intensive. And in comparison to Pix4D and Metashape, it feels a lot more resource intensive. Both Pix4D and Metashape, I can run larger models on, even though this machine is not highly spec'd out. Hey Marv, any thoughts on the Auto Evo 2? Don't want to stray too far. That's okay, Marv. You know, I've been wanting to try out the Evos. The Evos are very interesting to me, and I am actually subscribed to several channels of folks who use them. My biggest thing with the Evos and other drones is, where are those third-party developers? I need my flight apps. And, you know, so I'm using Litchi, Ground Station Pro, Drone Harmony, Map Pilot, Pix4D's Capture. They're all on my iPhone and on my iPad. And, you know, they have different purposes for me. The big drawback to some of these other drone manufacturers is that all these folks don't have the SDKs, the software developer kits. So I would love to try that platform out. I would love to take an Autel Evo out. I want to see the image quality myself. But the problem is, if I don't have the flight apps that can do the jobs that I have for my DJIs, the drone isn't so useful to me for the work that I'm doing. It's a good drone for flying for fun, and it looks like it's producing some really good output as well. But it's just, you know, who are the third-party app developers? Can I do grid patterns? Can I do crosshatch patterns? Can I film facades? Can I pre-program flight routes that I use over and over again? And if there's not third-party stuff out there for it, then the drone doesn't have as much value to me for the work I'm doing. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with the drone. It just means that we don't have all these third parties developing. And the third-party developers can only do so much. They've got development teams for iOS and for Android because they're putting it out on both platforms. They're doing DJI, now they're doing Autel, now they're doing the next one. You know, there's a diminishing returns, in economic speak, to how many platforms you're building for. You can only have so many development teams. And so if the vast majority of pilots are all flying DJI, guess what the developers are developing for? They're developing for DJI. Let's look down here. 16 RAM WebODM installer, 24 acres, 141 pics, 2 hours, 3-minute processing time on the default settings. It was a good ortho, a so-so 3D. Thanks, Corey. I remember you said you were going to be trying that out. So anyone else who's along here right now in the chat window, Corey Clicks just popped in. So he's run a WebODM, a larger model than I've run so far on the iMac. So that's encouraging to me that maybe when I retest this on the Windows machine over here, that I'm going to see some better results and that I can run that 300 image model that I want to run. So, all right. And Joe, what do we have? Did you indicate that you can use Metashape Standard? Yeah, Joe. So when you're looking at the 3D view in Metashape Standard, you can actually crop in on your model. So your model's there in your modeling window, and you can actually select and deselect areas. So usually people use that for clipping out the edgy areas where we don't have as many points in the cloud, where we're losing the details. So we crop everything in. So you can, in Metashape Standard, crop in there, go to your full screen, and do a screen capture afterward. So when you do that screen capture, make sure that you have it in the straight top-down view. And now with the screen capture, you've got a nice little 2D image there. It's not going to be an image that you can overlay on a map, so it's not something you're going to throw on Google Earth afterward. But if you just want to show someone, hey, I flew that property, and here's the top-down view. So it's a 2D view, right? And you've done a screen capture, so you can provide them with a nice little 2D image of the property that you've flown. So that's one quick way if you just want to share something with someone and say, hey, I did this 3D model of the property. Here's what it looks like top down. And maybe you get their interest in it and you say, we can do orthomosaic models for you, but that requires a higher license for us. So let's talk about the job that you want us to do. So, so there you go. And then, okay, thank you. That's what I was thinking too. DJI isn't perfect, but the interface is consistent. Yep, and the tools are available. I would love to see more of the great third-party apps out there working with other drone manufacturers. But if they're selling to a pool of only a couple thousand people who own that particular drone, they need to justify the expenses of doing that development. It's the big supply and demand thing. So, by the way, in my previous life before I was in telecom, I did my graduate work in economics, and yes, the dismal science, which is why I got into networking afterward in the first place, because networking was way more fun than economics. Let me see here. So, yeah. No problem, Joe. I hope that that answered you well. And so I'm already looking at it 45 minutes in. Sorry for the pauses and gaps here and there. I'm glad to have you all along again, as always. Next week, most likely, we'll be talking about the launch of the new class. And I'm also working on several other tutorial videos that I'll be telling you about a little later for one of those software manufacturers who does drone flight apps. And so we'll talk more about what they're doing and then some of the new tutorial videos that I'm going to be doing with them. And in the meantime, this week, I'm going to be running around doing some more photography and some more drone video because I want to play a little more with color space. And I got to tell you, if you couldn't tell, it really bothered me that we were having these color space issues for a person, because I want things to be spot on, but gosh, I just wish there were some standards in how monitors on computers work, that there was, that they're all calibratable. That would be so helpful. And David, yeah, would be cool to check if quality of the WebODM still produces. Yeah, and I agree, David. So that's why I'm going to run it on the Windows machine this week and try out a bigger one, and also try out that particular one that I did. And Corey, if you do any more testing as well, please drop a note and a comment here, and because I'm sure everyone else is really curious as well. Because if you're just starting out with the 3D modeling and the 2D modeling, WebODM, it just looks like such a great path, and the fact that it's open source, and I'm a very strong believer in open source, it just feels a little top heavy, and like we've got to buy that souped up machine just for getting that 300 image model. Where are you spending the money? All right, everybody. I'm going to be dropping off now. It's getting really hot in this room. Arizona has suddenly heated up, which is what it does. So that's why I'm doing these things at 8 a.m. so that once I'm done with this, I can turn the fans on, crank up the air conditioner, and it's not competing with the microphone. So there we go. All right, everyone, have a great start to the week, and we'll see you again next week. And you'll see some more videos going up here. For all those who are on my Patreon channel, thanks for subscribing and supporting. And look out this week, because several more lectures are going to be coming to Patreon before the course hits Udemy. So you guys are my beta testers, and you're giving me the feedback that I need, and additional things that you want to see in it, we're going to make those happen. All right, let's look back down. Make sure I didn't miss anybody else. All right, everyone, have an awesome day and an awesome start to the week. We'll see you again real soon. In the stream.